Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Aparuddhade Sangamata Satawara Yesodavanta Bamunchantu Satang. This morning, Ajahn Kalyana told me this is autumn in Australia. This is springtime in England. So observe the breath, the body, looking inward, looking at yourself, not looking at others or other things. Get this feeling of just being a listener, awakened, a kind of expansive acceptance of the present moment, not searching for anything or being intimidated by the situation you're in, but just being able to have this sense of observing, being an observer, a knower, rather than somebody that's trying to meditate or get something or get rid of something. It's like a relaxed attention. Usually, attention is like a command, like a military command. You say attention, and everybody goes very stiff. If you've ever been in the military, you don't relax. When the drill sergeant says attention, and you contract, you go very stiff. But in meditation, attention isn't about becoming contracted and stiff, but relaxed and open, paying attention, being this knowing, this knower, rather than somebody who's trying to get something, attain something, or trying to get rid of something you don't like. Paying attention, relaxed attention is like listening. It's not judging. It's not to decide what's right or wrong, good or bad, but just listening to the way it is. Whatever you're thinking or feeling at this moment, you're listening. You're aware of it, rather than thinking, adding to it with the sense of it being you and it should or shouldn't be like this. So Ajahn Chah, one time I asked him, I said how difficult meditation was for me, and he said, Sumedho, it's holiday of the heart. He said, in Thai they say, Pak Pon Tang Chit Chai. I translated as holiday of the heart. And I thought to myself, holiday? That's hard work. And I began to see how I approached the subject of meditation it wasn't relaxed or a holiday. It was trying to get control. It was an obsession with controlling the mind and trying to get something by getting rid of unwholesome states or getting rid of wandering mind or whatever. So it began to see that holiday of the heart when I started relaxing and opening and not trying to control everything. And just a patient, kind of a gentle, patient practice of returning to the breath or the body, the state of mind, just this sense of patiently doing it like a very simple-minded person, rather than, a highly qualified expert that wants perfection from the conditioned realm. It's much more humbling attitude of just patiently, when your mind wanders, that's okay, you just go back to the present, the Paccuppanna Dhamma, either through the anapanasati, contemplating the posture, the physical body as you're experiencing it now, or the aramana, the state of mind you're in, is like this, with this sense of sati sampajanya, allowing it to be what it is. This isn't judgmental. It's not like following it with other thoughts or proliferating, but it is the way it is. And in that attitude of relaxed attention, you're actually letting go of it. If it is an unwholesome state of mind, or anger, or the mind wanders, just by relaxing and observing it, being the knower, and letting go of it, it resolves itself, it ceases. So this morning about the third noble truth, the cessation of dukkha. First noble truth, the statement, there is suffering, it should be understood, and then the insight, it has been understood. There's a knowing. You've changed your attitude towards suffering from taking it personally, trying to get away from it, trying to find happiness, to accepting it. Suffering is like this. That's an insight. The second noble truth, there's a origin of suffering due to avijja, tanha, upadana, due to ignorance of the Four Noble Truths and the desires that arise, and the grasping of those desires is the origin. The cause of suffering. So the emphasis on knowing the cause of suffering, like tanha, kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha, the three categories in the second noble truth help to see the coarser, kind of obvious sensual desires, and then the more subtle ones, the bhava tanha and BuddhaBodhivana, the desire for attaining, achieving, getting something you don't have, the desire, the longing to have something that you imagine or you don't have right now. Bhavadanha, BuddhaBodhivana, desire to get rid of what you don't like. So as I said yesterday, the desire, danha, it's not something bad, or we've got to annihilate danha, but know danha, know the result of grasping danha, grasping desire, out of ignorance of Dhamma, then of course the result is grief, sorrow, despair, and anguish. They say in Pali, sukha pariteva tukha tomana upayat. So then the insight, tanha, should be let go of. So it's the practice of letting go. To let go, you have to know what you're attached to. So it's quite, these three categories of danha, or desire, I found them incredibly insightful, because I tended to see it more like you should get rid of desire. This is how maybe a Western mind would tend to interpret. You shouldn't have any desires, you've got to get rid of them. It's not that. This is a desire realm we're experiencing, so it's not about suicide. Buddha forbade us to commit suicide. It's an offense against the Vinaya. So it's not about annihilating oneself, but it's letting go of this ignorant attachment, just habitual. We're creatures of habit. We become very conditioned by all kinds of things, by education, by religion, by culture. So we're always interpreting life through distortions, through the desires that we're attached to. We don't even know we're attached to desire. We're just operating from the momentum of conditioning. So in the Four Noble Truths, it's about waking up to suffering, exploring it, investigating, taking it into its cause, the insight into letting go of the cause. So the practice, when I met Lungpa Cha in 1967, I already had the insight into letting go. So when he asked me what I'd been doing, I told him about the practice. I developed this practice to investigating the Four Noble Truths. I had the insight into letting go of danha, of desire. So he said, very good, keep doing that and learn. But he said with Vinaya, first to learn Vinaya you have to grasp it. So he's telling me to let go and at the same time to grasp. And he said, when you understand the relationship of Dhamma and Vinaya, then you're okay. Yes. Dhamma is about letting go, non-attachment. Vinaya is about attaching, it's about precepts, it's about behavior. And in order to learn Vinaya, you have to attach to it. You can't just decide, Buddha said let go of conditioned phenomena. Vinaya is conditioned phenomena, so just let go of it. I mean, I've heard Western monks say this, I'm not attached to the Vinaya. But that's not it. It's not a dismissal of conditioned phenomena, but with Vinaya, we're learning to live within a structure of community that is impersonal. It's Sangha rather than Ajahn Sumedho, Ajahn Kalyano, and these personalities, Ajahn Chah. These are members of Sangha, but refuge in Sangha is in supatipanno, in practice, in the right way. So the cessation of suffering, when you let go of desire, and to repeat myself, it's not an annihilation of desire, but when you let go of desire, then you're aware of its presence and you're aware of its anicca, its impermanence, because desire is a sankhara, so it's changing. That awareness, sati, sampajanya, panya, wisdom, allows desire to be what it is, and let it go. When you see the result of attaching to it, you let go of it, which it doesn't mean you get rid of it, but then it naturally ceases. So it's allowing something to be what it is and fulfill its karmic duty, such as if what arises ceases. And there's awareness of cessation. There's non-suffering is like this. Do we ever really know? It's like anger. We're aware that we're angry. I feel really angry when that person said something I didn't like. We're aware of anger, but do we really appreciate non-anger when there's no anger? Like right now I'm sitting here and there's no anger. I'm not feeling any anger at this moment. So a dosa is like lopa is greed, dosa is aversion, moha is delusion. But alopa, adosa, moha, the negation, the Pali grammar is a negation. Non-dosa is like this. Non-greed is like this, and it's so obvious, but it's never noted. It's not valued. Because we tend to only respond to the presence of, I feel greed, lust, aversion, fear, and then it's sakya ditthi because it's my fear, my greed, my anger, my jealousy, and then we create, I shouldn't have these kind of bad emotions. I feel anger towards my mother and father. I should love them, the ideal of loving and respecting. And then you feel guilty because you don't. And so we create a sakya ditthi, personal habit patterns of through identifying with lopa, dosa, moha, greed, hatred, and delusion. But we don't create an identity with alopa, dosa, moha. We say, my no anger, my non-greed. It sounds like boasting, doesn't it? I don't have any greed or anger anymore. I'm just so pure. I mean, that's sakya ditthi also. That's not it. But it's noticing the absence. making even educating yourself, your mind with this wisdom teaching, informing consciousness with wisdom is what we're doing with vipassana, insight meditation. Because our consciousness is not ignorant, but we tend to operate from avijja, from ignorance. So like the Sakya Ditti, Silabhata Paramasa, Vicikiccha, the first three fetters are all based on not understanding the Noble Truth, not knowing Dhamma. We create this personal identity with the body, with our memories, with our emotions. We create an ego. We're culturally conditioned, socially conditioned, and generations have different ideals, different tastes, different attitudes, and from one generation to the next. At my age, I'm a generation where I fail to comprehend the younger generation. A lot of the music that you hear. And attitudes and that, because my social conditioning and that was formed, started 80 years ago, and things were very different. Attitudes and tastes, fashions were very different then. But all these, we form a sense of self out of ignorance. So the Third Noble Truth, as we let go of desire, then we're aware of its absence. Desire ceases. That's the nirodha, the end of suffering. It's not like absolute end, like the total end of suffering, never again will I ever experience any form of suffering whatsoever. I mean, that's the hope, isn't it? Desire. But this realm, when you have this insight into nirodha, you're taking just the example of desire ceasing. In the absence of desire, it's wisdom, discernment. It's discerning, it's not judging. Non-desire is like this. Non-anger is like this. So it's educating, informing the conscious reality of this moment with wisdom, rather than just operating the proliferating attitudes and habit patterns and conditions that we've developed in our lives through ignorance of Dhamma. So the statement, there is the end of suffering, end of ignorance. And it's called the Nirodha Satya, or the Third Noble Truth. So the First Noble Truth is the statement, there is. The Second Noble Truth is there's an origin, and there's an end, there's a cessation. And the Fourth Noble Truth is there is the way to live one's life and not to create suffering. No longer just operating from ignorance, avijja, no longer avijja being the force that we are blinded by, deluded by, but using vicca, or knowledge, wisdom, knowing the way things are. Now the insight, there is the cessation of suffering, there's the Bhariyati statement, the first aspect. Second aspect, what to do about it is to make it clear, to really notice it, the absence, so that you're respecting this absence of desire, of anger, or of greed, or of delusion. It's like this, and it in this sense of like respecting it or appreciating it. It's like this. This absence is relaxed. It's a kind of a sense of release from the tensions of ignorance. Then you begin to, and it can be quite subtle, so it needs to make it more, to really respect it and appreciate it. In Thai they say tam hai jang, make it clear, make it so that you really, it's not just passing and dismissed. Like we experience Nirodha all the time, but we don't appreciate it, we don't even notice it, because we're always going on to the next thing. So sometimes we do have mystical experiences where suddenly your whole ego drops away. It's some kind of awe-inspiring moment. You're looking at a beautiful sunset or some magnificent view, something that that stops your wandering, thinking mind in the sense of awe, or something that is wonderful, full of wonder, will stop the momentum of just mental proliferating. Sometimes the ego drops away. You experience the bliss of just being released from the tyranny of the self-view. But it takes conditions, something that inspires awe or special for us to notice it, because in ordinary life we don't notice that. We're just caught up in the momentum, the samsara vata, the cycles, the endless cycles that repeat themselves. So this samsara vata is a Pali word for the world. It's just, you're just caught in the momentum of these cycles, and they repeat themselves till we die, or we know Dhamma, we realize Dhamma. So this third noble truth it's reality. It's not a created state. It's not imagined. It's not some kind of heavenly realm that we kind of float in a cloud of bliss. It's quiet, but it's empty. It's where things cease. There's consciousness still operating, but we're not proliferating into it. We're not grasping desires or trying to reject them. Things still arise and cease. The momentum of our karma, our vipaka karma, still operate, but our relationship to it changes from ignorant reaction, blind grasping or repressing, to knowing. And the ultimate knowing, when the Buddha gave his first sermon at Saranath, the Dhammacakka Pavattana Sutta ends with Anya Kondanyo. Kondanyo knows, understands. What does Kondanyo understand? All conditions are impermanent. It's this simplicity of this knowing. It's not like he understands everything in the world and who created it, and how about the sun and moon and stars and Jupiter and Mars. Kondanya probably never heard of Australia. So, probably the Buddha didn't even know about Australia. Or Europe, in fact. But that's not those are knowing about things, isn't it? Like Australia is a thing. we point, as they say, this land is Australia. The land itself doesn't announce that its name is Australia. Does it? The land here. It says, I am Australia. It doesn't. It's just land. But it's a human culture, human conventions. This is Australia, that's New Zealand, that's the UK, and we make these pronouncements from our cultural conditioning. But Kondanya, what he realized, doesn't sound like, he realized all that arises is subject to ceasing. But Kondanya realized it was reality. It wasn't just intellectualizing or just agreeing with the noble truths. There's some kind of intellectual appreciation of it. It's jnana dasana, jnana. It's profound insight, knowledge, and understanding. Direct knowing through one's own insight, not through because the Buddha said so. Now this insight into Nirodha, as we cultivate this respect for this empty reality, this non-attachment, the end of where conditions cease, they arise and they cease. When conditions cease, there's still consciousness. One doesn't faint or die in the sense that you don't, but the consciousness still operates, but it's no longer influenced by ignorance. And it's empty. It's not, it has no quality, no characteristic except of knowing. It's where universal wisdom operates. So usually we experience consciousness through senses, through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. Because in order to see, we have to be conscious. In order to hear, smell, taste, touch, think. But consciousness itself is not dependent on seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. So in the Nirodha, it is not about seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. It's about knowing. discerning. It's where I use this word, English word discern, for this kind of wisdom. It's not about true and false anymore. The true and false is about, worldly things, but it's discerning reality from delusion. So the cessation of suffering is reality. It's Dhamma. It's not manufactured state. It's not created through ignorance. It's recognized, realized through this mindfulness, sati, sampajanya, and panya. It's an insight into reality, the third noble truth. The door to the deathless is open. Abaruta de sangamatasa tawara. Amatasa tawara, the door, the gate to the deathless. So this is a pronouncement. It is something you release your faith into. It's something. It's not just an empty statement, an over-exaggeration of anything. It's true. It's real. And that gate then is this sati, sampajanya, panya. When you investigate conscious experience and through these Four Noble Truths, then you see that it's the only possibility that any of us have to escape from the force of ignorance and habit patterns that we're so blinded by. Is through sati, sampajanya, and panya. So then, this is, the conditioned realm is about time, reality. We believe in time as our reality, and then the conditioned world is the real world. and these bodies this body is really me, and my emotions and my fears and desires are my problems. Me and mine, we're thoroughly convinced and committed to this sense, this delusion as the real world. But this is conditioned phenomena. This is not the way things really are. It's the way we think and interpret our lives, our experience, through ignorance, through avijja. So the Buddha's teaching is the awakening teaching. Wake up, pay attention, investigate. It's not a belief system which you commit yourself to Buddha's teachings on belief, but it's this. These Four Noble Truths are for investigation. They're not for grasping or belief. So when you're given the tools, use them. They're meant to be used. They're not just worshipped or just. We can memorize the Four Noble Truths quite easily. There's not that much to memorize. And then we can go into Abhidhamma and memorize all kinds of marvelous terminologies. But actually, the Four Noble Truths is enough. It's not. It can be. People see it in a Buddhist society in London. They used to regard Four Noble Truths as kind of basic Buddhism. People who come to the Buddhist society and interested, they don't know nothing about it, you teach them the Four Noble Truths, and then you go to advanced things like Mahayana or Tibetan. So Theravada, when they wanted basic Buddhist teachings, they invite me to the Buddhist society to teach the Four Noble Truths. It's like you're permanently in a position of like primary school Buddhism. And actually, I found, that the Four Noble Truths is the teaching that the Buddha gave, and it's a practical teaching, and it's through your life. I've used it through my life as a monk, to remind myself of the things that I have to experience as a Buddhist monk living in Thailand or England or wherever. Because you're subject to, you've got what they call vipaka karma, resultant karma that arises from the past. So I have personal tendencies, attitudes, challenges. We all have individual. Vipaka karma is not the same for everybody. That arises. For example, I found out in being abbot of monastery in the UK, in England, I began to be aware of, I didn't know how to take criticism. And I didn't get hurt, my feelings would get hurt if I was criticized, I'd be offended, or I'd be very aggressive. I'd say, you're just being difficult, and blame the person who's criticizing me. But along I began to notice that I really was afraid of it, and I was giving off the message of, don't say anything to offend Ajahn Sumedho. So one day I happened to think, is this what I'm doing, living ahead of a community, saying, your practice living here at Chithurst is just to not offend me, to make me feel okay all the time? Is this what I expect of the world? Taking it to absurdity, to a kind of absurd reality. Is this what a head of a monastery is supposed to be doing? And so I saw that this weakness, the vipaka karma of my personality and fears. And I started, really listening to criticisms, inviting them, because to learn how to listen to somebody who doesn't agree with me or criticizes me. Sometimes, it's not exactly that they understand. It can be malice or just delusion on their part. It can be blind spots in myself. But this sense of listening, I'd listen, I could hear the words that the person was saying, I could feel my own emotional reaction. And this is like conscious awareness, the silent mind, allows both the experience that you're not shutting out what somebody's saying, you're not refusing to listen, you're not ignoring your own emotional reaction that arises when you hear things you don't like. It's like this. But there's a knowing, this refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha becomes stronger and more, and you become more confident because you're not asking favors from life or special privileges because to support your personality anymore. And you can discern sometimes, we all have blind spots. We don't know, we can't see how we're affecting other people till they tell us. So, you think, well, I'm the senior monk and you should respect me as one. But also, there's so many conditions arising at any moment that you can't know them all. Or how one's presence affects somebody else. So unless they inform you. So some things you can't change, like being tall and that. Some shorter people can feel intimidated by somebody who's taller than they are. Well, I can't make myself shorter, or there. But if I'm talking in a way that upsets people and I don't realize it, I can change that if I'm aware, that talking like this or using these phrases is upsetting people. I'm quite willing to change, and it's probably without intention, but just not knowing how what I'm saying affects people. So in my life as a monk, just these Four Noble Truths I've taken them as a practice. That's what I've used for 50 years now. And I found it just so, such a perfect teaching in itself. It's so brilliant because first you wonder why the Buddha emphasized suffering, because nobody likes that. Where other religions emphasize love, about love, God's love, and things like this, and that's inspiring. Like the word love in English, it inspires the mind. And of course the English word can be used for all kinds of things. And so there's unconditioned love, and then there's romantic love, and then we use it for we love this kind of food, and it doesn't mean that unconditioned love for food of any sort, but it means we like things. So the English word love can be used to have different meanings, but in the sense of metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, and Brahma Vihara, these inspire people, the Brahma Viharas, or things that are positive, that are inspiring, like all about universal love and fellowship. These inspire the mind. Positive terminologies. Dukkha isn't inspiring. So many religions start with the inspiration, but they notice that the Buddha started with pointing to the way things are. There is dukkha. And even though many people don't want to admit that, they always we should be happy and love each other and be compassionate and all that. That's not the way things are. Sometimes it's like that, but the conditioned realm is like this. So the Buddha is saying, wake up to the way things really are, to the reality of conditioning is like this. And then eventually that takes you to, the foundation of everything is, you could call it love or metta, non-aversion. But if you start out with love, and but you don't understand suffering, then you're depending on kind of a diet of sweets and sugar candy, and which after a while, and you have too much sugar, you get sick. Where suffering is asking us to take on life, to open to life, to investigate, not just to try to push away suffering and fear and anger and the dark side, the shadow side, the evil side of conditioned reality, but we're investigating it through the wisdom faculty, which isn't personal, which is universal, and which is available to us all the time, to each one of us. It's not something, say, that one of us has more than another. It's just a matter of learning to use it, to develop it, to cultivate it.